So welcome, everyone. I just came from another talk where they talked about tips for tech talks. I want to warn everyone, it's not going to be a tech talk. It's going to be very personal. So I'm probably going to use some of the things that was said not to. So bear with me. Before we jump in, I wanted to ask how many of you has a startup? Okay, good. How many of you have worked or working for one? Okay, great. Okay, fellow startuppers, great. So let's jump in. The adage says that 1 out of 10 startup fails. I did some research. It's partly true. One is what widely successful and makes the investors make the money on that one. But it doesn't mean the rest is not successful. It's successful in different categories, but it still is. That's what I consider a success. 83% of acquisition fails. I didn't go into much details of what's the timing when the acquisition fail, but they do, and I have some insights of why. It's not because I'm part of one. It's just because I went through one, and I can tell you some of the challenges. So this is what we're going to talk about, startup and acquisition, and it's my startup. But before we jump right in, I'm going to say some things about myself. So my name is Renata. I'm a mother of 3 children. I started Samebug. I want to talk about it more, along with my husband and one of the guys we know from university. And I do have to say, Samebug is like a 4th child. And I'm going to talk about that more as we're going into the talk. I'm an avid reader. I read a lot. I love that. I have an MBA in economics and finance. I'm not a technical person, but I have been working in the technology industry for quite a while. That comes with marrying a guy who is developing softwares for 25 years. I love being a businesswoman, and I loved having a startup, and I just like being in charge of things. And in my current job, I'm a customer success director. I make sure that the customers go through that journey that you see and they use our product well. Okay, so how it all began. It's all began with an idea and a thesis back in 2013. We called the company and the product Samebug. The general idea was, what if we take a stack trace, we analyze the stack trace, and then we are able to say who had the same stack trace, who dealt with the same problem. What if we connect them, and then they can help each other to solve? So the major idea was, don't fix the same bug again. And back when we started, the first MVP, minimal viable product, was this. It's a stack trace search. All you could do is take your stack trace, paste it into this search box. You could actually take the whole stack trace, and then we scraped the internet, GitHub, Stack Overflow, Google Groups for the stack traces, and if we found matches, we actually took you to the page where you could find the solution. By 2018, we grow the team to be 8 people. We're based in Budapest, Hungary. We raised $1 million from US angel investors and a Hungarian institutional investor. And that's where we were. But there were 3 things that we were missing all through the whole time. 1, we were missing stack traces or exceptions or occurrences, wherever you want to call it. So we were missing the data that we would have needed. It was really hard to get developers to paste their stack trace. If you're not in the environment that they are at, it's hard to ask this from them. The other one, we missed revenue. I think I'm surprised, looking backwards, how long we could go with the money we had. and having it without revenue. But obviously, to have a healthy business, to grow, you need revenue. And the third one coming from Hungary is you don't have it's not Silicon Valley, so you don't have the knowledge of software as a service. So we were missing these three ingredients, but the most important thing that happened and we realized we miss is definitely being the data. And we realized that around like 2 years ago. And we started to think, who has the data? Now, who has the data? So the error monitoring people has the data because all you do, you take your SDK, you put it in your code, and you start sending the data. That's what we needed. So as like a last reserve to make revenue, we thought maybe we can sell the technology to the error monitoring companies like Rollbar, Sentry, Bugsnag, and Raygun, just to name the larger ones. And then we can talk to them. We actually did talk to all of them. And in 2018, November, 2 years ago, 2017, we met the CEO of Rollbar. His name is Brian Rue. And we realized during that call that they have the same vision. Back in 2013, when we started Samebug, they had the same vision. But they realized they don't have the data and they had the SaaS knowledge, so they started an error monitoring service, which is part of the equation. So I see that as two combining things. They thought of the idea of Samebug, but they realized it won't make money. Now, we learned that the hard way. So when we met, it was like finding kindred spirits, realizing that you could work on the same idea in different continents. And so we realized there is a way forward. So what happened, at the end of the conversation, and sometimes it sounds like a fairy tale, and I admit it sometimes felt like it. But so we had three options. One, it was nice meeting you, not talking again, and we just part ways with Rollbar. The second one was, let's work together in some ways, maybe selling the technology, selling the service, getting money, and keeping both companies alive. And the third one is, what if we merge the two companies and merge what we have and go forward together? Now, we didn't want to do the first one, obviously. It was very important to us. We tried the let's get together and let's work together. Well, it just didn't look good. And then so we were like, okay, then let's merge. And that's when we run the acquisition, the first round. I'm saying the first round because during that time, it just didn't work. We got the offer, but then somewhat, the puzzles just weren't be able to put together. When you run a startup, it's not just you, it's everyone else. It's other stakeholders. There's money at stake. There is other people involved. Not to say that we had a great relationship with all of our stakeholders. It just wasn't the right time. So I think one of the lessons I learned that this acquisition didn't happen was you have to decide fast and you have to be able to let things go. And this wasn't a time when we were ready to let Samebug go, I believe. But it was a time to learn that you can actually let go of something you think is going to be fantastic, which I always thought merging with Rollbar is one of the best things that could have happened with Samebug. But it didn't happen. I think the good stuff was that we came to that conclusion very quickly. The reason it was important, because I think if we would have gone over and try hard, we would have hurt each other's businesses. And it definitely was not what we wanted to do. So we called it off. We just said it's not going to work. We were all sad. And then, but we just couldn't let it go, so we kept in touch. We actually worked for Rollbar, and it just, there was something in it that we didn't want to, we just didn't want to let go. So the time went on. It was about a year, and Samebug came to a crossroad because we didn't make money, and we were tired. There were two ways. One, to figure out how to make money, which we didn't succeed over the 5 years, so I wasn't sure we're going to do that in another 3 months. Or we could fundraise. Now, I'm pretty realistic, and because we're not living in the Silicon Valley, without having revenue, if you're not Snapchat or you don't have millions of users and traction, you're not going to have money. And I just didn't feel we have a compelling story. And honestly, I was also very tired. Doing a startup in itself is hard enough, but having it with your husband and with kids and everything, that's an extra layer on the whole thing. So after 5 years, I was like, we're done. I'm not going to do this. But I didn't want to, I still believed in Samebug. I still believed in the idea. I still do. So it hasn't changed. So we came with the investors. Although they had pieces of the business, we still run it. So it was still our business. If we didn't want to do something, there was no way they can make us. So we said, we're done, and let's try to sell the business. And that's when the second round happened. We went back to Rollbar, kept the relationship. It was great. Said, hey, you want to buy it because we're selling it. But here it was important that we were done. If Rollbar said no, we just would have finished it. So it wasn't like we're just going to keep trying. But they said yes. And in 2018, December 31st, we signed a deal where they acquired Samebug. So the second round was successful. And the new beginning started. And I'm going to tell you about some of its challenges. But this is 3 of us, the co-founders. So that's my husband, myself, and Donnie, and the 2 co-founders of Rollbar. And that's the team that we joined. And I think the size is an important one. I'm going to talk about it as we go on. The size of the company and how many people it has. So great. You sold it. You're done. It continues. It doesn't call Samebug anymore. The name has some, you lost that. You get the new shirt. And you get kind of a new identity. And the good thing is I always felt what we were doing will remain, and it has. But there are new challenges, and I'm going to share some of them with you. Challenge number 1, cultural differences. Now, I used to be in the US. I traveled a lot. I have many, many friends from all over the US. I think the only piece that I was missing is Silicon Valley and San Francisco. Even though you think you know the US, you probably don't know San Francisco. You probably don't know the culture there. So even though I know what's going to happen, even though I know the people and kind of their mentality, it still shocked me and it still makes me adjust every day. Now, I'm going to just say some of the few. One, and I think it's not Hungarian thing. It's kind of Europe versus the US. And I might be generalizing in some things, but some of the issues or some of the differences is because we live in a social system where we used to be taken care in so many ways. And in the US, that's almost non-existing. So I get a lot of jokes about vacations. They make a joke of how many vacation days we have, and they feel that we on vacation. I used to be upset about this because I generally think me and my team are very, very hardworking. So it's kind of just okay to have the vacation. But yeah, I don't bother about it anymore, but that's definitely a peck in the eye back from the other team. The other thing is task versus people. And I'm saying that with the knowledge that we Hungarians, I tend to be very individualistic. But at the same time, I think we do think about community and people. And I'm not saying that the US is not. But the task and achievements are much more important than, kind of people. And the third one to me is communication. Now, that's a big one. I generally tend to be very direct. I learned to shade it off in a sense of probably I won't go up to you now and say, your hair looks ugly. So I don't do that stuff. But if I think about something or I think somebody's not doing something well, I would definitely voice it. Or if I have an opinion, I would directly say it. I talked to one of my colleagues about the same issue of why they're polite. And they said they just don't want to hurt your feelings. But I mean, you know what they're thinking, right? So I wish they say it. And I guess they wish to be more polite. So it's something we are working on. Now, challenge number 2 is distributed teams. Is in terms of distributed teams that I believe it's a hybrid distributed team. We have 3 offices, one in Budapest, so that's the Samebug team, one in San Francisco, and one in Barcelona. So people sit in office, but you still distribute it. And this is tricky because if you are a solely distributed team, then you have all the processes at place. You have all the docs, you religiously document. Okay. Sorry. Do you want me to hold it? I could have just showered then. Okay. I hold it here. Yeah? Is it better? Is it on? Okay. I try not to move around too much. So if it's just solely a distributed team, that's very different. You have everything in place to make that work. But it's kind of in between, and I think it's like you're learning how to do that. And a caveat to that is the time zone difference. It's 9 hours. You're never, ever at the same time zone. And I'm saying that with our situation a bit different. I know a lot of people who work in the same time zone difference. They would shift their workday and then make sure that they have overlapping time. You kind of don't have that luxury when you have kids. They will wake up at 6. You do the grind in the morning. You get them to school. You get to work, so you work from 9 till 5. You want to make sure your team is a team, and then you're there. And then you have to pick up the kids, and then you want to be with them until 8. And then you can sit down and start working again, because that's when your colleague's working in San Francisco. And that means you end up being worked 10, 12 hours, and it's definitely in the evenings. This is actually my calendar. And it indicates that I do work a lot on outside working hours, especially that I'm involved in the leadership. And so I have cross-team works, and I'm involved in a lot of things that more company, like a whole company focus, so not just our team. So that's definitely a challenge. And you always have to manage that in some ways or another. The third one is an engineering organization or a technology company. And I'm so glad to see so many of my men colleagues here. I get asked a lot about, do I felt ever disadvantaged of being a woman in a technical industry? I said, no, not ever. I always proud I'm not a technical person, so the expectation never been there for me. But I always felt disadvantaged because I don't have the technical knowledge. And it's not because I'm a woman, it's just I don't. And working in an engineering organization where Engineers are a scarce resource, I think, and often spoiled. They do think others don't matter as much. And I have experienced that. So I just wanted to call this out and say, please, please, please be mindful. We know a lot, and product and marketing and sales all plays a huge, huge part of making what you're building to be successful. So I think this is something I'm learning, but it doesn't discourage me to be in a technology industry. I actually do like the challenge to be in a room with full of men all the time. I like working with them. They're great. And a lot of times I like the way they work. I think the biggest one here is being an owner of your own business and being your own boss. And there is a reason you become an entrepreneur. There's no doubt about it. And then you become an employee, which I did work 10 years ago to a larger company. But I've been my own person, and my husband never really worked for a larger or any company. So that was the biggest shift. And we're learning how to love your job still. It's definitely helping that we bring a lot to the table through the acquisition, like what we worked on. It still remains, it's still an important piece of our vision. And I think it definitely helped both of us to join a smaller company and not a big one, where you still make an impact, you don't have as much bureaucracy, there are processes healthily enough, and you still make a difference. And I think for entrepreneurs like us, feeling that creativity and problem solving and all that adrenaline-driven stuff, it's very important. So I'm glad that we joined a smaller size company and we remain to make a difference. Now, so these are some of the challenges that we are facing. They don't go away. So when I look at all of them, it doesn't go away. It's like a roller coaster like this. Sometimes the time zone difference, I don't care. When it's the third night in a row, when I'm sitting in front of the computer at 11, I do. But, it comes in waves. And some of the things I want to share, what helps to overcome these difficulties. One of them is openness. Openness towards each other. In the company, we all have various degrees of cultural knowledge. We traveled. We know a lot of people from different backgrounds. So I think there is a general openness of trying to figure out how you work and who you are. And one of the things that helps us the most is the company has on-sites where we meet in San Francisco 3 times a year. And I think what it helps is you actually meet the people face to face. We spend the week doing activities, we work, we have team building things. So I find it a lot of times when I had the on-site, I had time with another person, and next time we have Slack messaging where I would have interpreted in a different way. I don't, because I know that whoever sits at the other side means well. So that's definitely helping. This is one of the pictures of a team activity that we did last time. The other important one is Goodwill. And I will show you in a minute the definition of Goodwill. But to me is thinking good of the other person and thinking good of the other person's intent. I think both are really hard to do. It's easy to say, it's hard to do, and it's a conscious effort every single day. I can't remember a day when I didn't have to practice. because we're different, and with all the other things it's on the plate, it's just hard. So goodwill is a noun, a kindly feeling of approval and support. And I like the examples. She has goodwill towards all her co-workers. I think that's it. I think it explains everything. The third one is the shared vision. I mentioned the vision we have back in 2013. The interesting thing about it, we tried countless ways to make Samebug happen. There's another talk I can give about that one. But one thing, every time we prepared a deck for investors or a partner, we never changed the vision over time. So I can go back to the 2013 deck we did for the investors, and it's exactly has the same vision. It's helping developers build software quickly and painlessly, and also is building a knowledge base where people will not fix the same bug again. I still believe in it very strongly. And this is the big picture us and the Rollbar founders never had question around. We might have disagreements of how it should be executed on a day-to-day basis, but every time we have a disagreement or a rougher time, I can always go back to that single point. And I really like that picture because it looks at something and then it always holds us together. So I think this is very important. I believe not everybody would have that. Sometimes companies do that. There's cultural things, and then you become this and that. But because it was so personal, so it's easier for us. And I wanted to share this. I'm not going to read it out. I just heard at the talk. If it's up there, you can read it. So I let you read. I pause for a 20-second. Okay. Yeah, I see you all done. So what I like in this quote, it completely shows and tells why we are able to work together. We have a shared vision. We have a common will. And we so believe in it that we can actually go through the hard times. So that's the reason. And I'm glad that we have that reason. And I'm glad it's been so natural. The other things that really helped us, this is the core values of the Rollbar founders. It's honesty, transparency, dependability, and I wanted to keep the visual structure, but the fourth one is actually pragmatism, but it's translated into practicality, so that's fine. And I want to focus on the first two, because I think that was the one that kept us going back from the first meeting to where we are now. Is we always been honest, even when we were doing the deal. I believed from the first minute that the person who sits on the opposite side is truthful and honest. I know it sounds naive, and I admit I am, and that's fine. It worked so far, so there's no point for me to change. And the transparency, I see that in the company now that we join. And this is something, even though it wasn't as transparent before we joined the company. So these core values were Rollbar's before we joined. But I have a colleague here, so you can ask. But when we went through the deal, we were very transparent. I mean, as much as you can. There are legal issues and some secrets you can't tell, but as much we were transparent during the whole time. And I think this is one of the most important ingredients to keep people around you, because they just really appreciate it. I think it tells the whole deal that people who were at the team are still working with us all through we've been acquired for a year now. And I also want to highlight some of the benefits for me of the acquisition. Benefit number one is the emotional journey between that I thought not being able to do Samebug is a failure. And I started the presentation with, what is failure when you have what is a failure when you have a startup? When we sold it, it took me a long time to emotionally say it was success, because it still didn't go down the drain. Some people still got their money, and I think we've been richer in a lot of ways all through the time. So it no wasted the experience. But I still felt it's a failure because I wanted to make it happen. I wanted that vision to be done by us, and I would have loved to lead a larger company and be in San Francisco, not because I was bold, but because I made it. But when it happened, everybody kept saying, you still survived. You still did something that was valuable to someone. And it took me a long time to accept that truth. And now I kind of look back and think, okay, there was someone who what we did was valuable. And they actually paid money for it, and they actually kept us. And it's adds to the company a whole deal. The other one is anxiety. Usually people don't talk about how hard to run a startup. It doesn't mean I would not recommend it to do it. I would say if I know what it would entail, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't start it again. So it's good to not know, in my case at least. So anxiety, just to give you an example, out of 7 Christmases, there were 5 where I either had to buy back the company we had. I wasn't sure if I can give salary to the people when they come back in January. I wasn't sure we get money for the next round. And I wasn't sure if our company is going to be bought or everything that we worked for 6 years is just going to go down the drain. And that was 4, but there's a 5 one. I remember of each one of them very well, and we pulled it through, but I wish it was easier. So for me, the benefit is there's no more anxiety. I get anxious when things don't go the way I would like it, or I get upset on things because we're not moving fast enough, or my creativity or other things. But these are other things I worry about, but not other people's, and if I can give them salary and stuff. The 4th one is fundraising. Fun one. I hated it all the time. It's you go there, they tell you you're not good enough, your business is not good enough. There are some pieces that are good enough, but not this one. And that was hard for me all the time. So it's not my responsibility anymore. It's the CEO's responsibility. There are some things I really miss of being a CEO. Now, this one is definitely not included. He's out there. I feel his pain. I'm very supportive. I know how hard it is, but I'm glad I don't have to worry about the money. I get the money on my bank account every single month. All my teammates get paid. I see the bank account. I'm like, yeah, okay. I don't lose sleep over it. So that's a huge, huge change. And the 4th benefit is, and I would not underestimate that. So whoever is lucky enough to work in a great company with smart, collaborative, like-minded people, stay there, enjoy, because it's great. When it was like 3 of us, and I forgot to say, we started in our basement. It was hard. You have to figure out everything. You don't know if it's good or bad. You don't know who to discuss. We had investors, we had advisors. They can give their advice. But at the end of the day, you pretty much left to your instinct. You don't have people to bounce it off on. And honestly, this is the first developer conference I've been in where I don't have the nudge and the push to talk to people to think that they might buy my product. And this is amazing feeling. And it's great to work with people who think alike, who has the shared vision, and they're smarter than you. And then we can just move things forward. So that was my talk. I thought I have 40 minutes. So we have, we have 15 minutes left. But I think it's a journey. There's no way I think we finished. There is still a chance it can fail. But we work on it every day. And I always thought a founder relationship is like a marriage. You work every day, otherwise it falls apart. And it's no different since we joined Rollbar. I still feel the ownership. I still feel responsible. And I still very interested in making that vision happen. So thank you for listening and staying. So that was great. And if you have any questions, we have time. I'm happy to answer. Yes.
Can you elaborate on the negotiations between Samebug and Rollbar? How did you get to yes?
How did we?
Get to yes.
Oh, the second time?
Yeah.
We wanted to sell the business.
Yeah.
So we knew what needs to be done in order for all the stakeholders to agree. And that's where the transparency and the trust comes. We said, and it was done, and then it's basically, it was easy. Yeah. So no juicy story on that one. I couldn't tell anyway. So it's like if there was one, I could have told. But no, it was easy. We were ready to let it go. Yeah. Yes.
Was this your first startup?
Yeah, and I don't want to do another one. It was hard. It was maybe if you're not married, and maybe if it's different. I think I would love to do a business, which I have ideas. I would love to be my own boss at some point. I have tons of things. I know people I would love to do stuff with, but I don't think I want to do a startup where it's a SaaS business and you have to be, I have to fundraise and have to start the whole story and you have to be in the States. I think one of the things that limited us, especially it's in Europe. So if you start a business in Europe, sooner or later you have to be in the States. There's no way around it. And because we were married, we have kids, we didn't have the luxury to have one of us or all of us move to the States. And so a lot of times one of the co-founder moves to the States and hassles there and then runs the business there. We just didn't have the luxury. And I think that's definitely been a disadvantage for us. So no, I would not start another one. Yes?
Are there people at your company or work at your company that aren't like you, that live for that startup adventure?
Oh yeah. So it's I think we're similar in that sense with my husband, but the rest of the team is in it for, you can ask my colleague, she sits here, so she can tell you why she's in it. But I think, I'm not sure if the vision of Samebug as such, but it's for what it entails on an everyday basis. And I think it's the values that we share. So I think it's a good place to work at. And I think it's, you can learn a lot, and it's an event. They get some of the adventures, but they don't have to do the adventure. So But I think you have to have some of the things to work in a startup. Like it's just, if you want no risk, that's definitely not the place. I remember we talked to them in November that if they come back in January, they might have to leave. So, yeah. Yes.
I'd like to continue what you said. At a given point, you have to go to the States.
Yeah.
Because in Europe, there's either no funding, or you can't sell anything here, or there are no people to work in your company.
I think there's no market in Europe. And I don't say that with the lightheartedness. I think there is a large market in the US. It's a large together market. So everybody speaks the language. It's 300 million people at once. In Europe, it's very divided. It depends what your startup is, but a lot of times you have to have legal and other issues. So the European Union is not one, whereas the US, there are federal things, but there is one. And I think it's the money. It's where the money is and where the knowledge. So I think being a SaaS business, it's there. It's the marketing machine that you can learn, and sales. Like when we talk now of, who to hire here, I think it's great to hire engineers in Europe. They're amazing. When we talk about product, okay. And then we come to sales and marketing. I think it gets narrower and narrower. And winning, it's a lot about marketing and sales. So you have to be in the US at some point, and sooner or later. Yeah. I wish it changes. But it's just reality. I hate to accept. Yeah. Anyone else?